Hello everyone and welcome to Mountain Lake Journal. I'm Tom Halleck. This week the search is on for a new president for the Plattsburgh State University campus. Longtime President John Ettling retired this past week after leading the college for the past 15 years.
It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 2019 spring commencement.
Dr. Ettling delivered his final commencement speech just a few weeks ago at this spring's graduation ceremony. During his decade and a half as president, Ettling oversaw the construction of two new academic buildings, the first on the SUNY Plattsburgh campus since the 1970s. He also shared in the spotlight as the Plattsburgh State women's hockey team won 7 national championships.
I have more rings than Tom Brady.
No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!
But Dr. Ettling has also faced challenges, including the most recent a year ago when a racist social media post led to a student march and protest, and the creation of a special task force aimed at improving diversity on campus. Work that will be carried on by the next president as a nationwide search is underway for Dr. Ettling's successor. Dr. Ettling joins us now. Welcome. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Tom. It's terrific to be here with you. Thanks for inviting me.
Was this a difficult decision for you?
It really wasn't a difficult decision. I'd been thinking about it for a while. I'm not young. I'm 74. I'm feeling every month of those 74 years. And so I told the chancellor last summer that I'd like to step down in a year. It wasn't a difficult decision, although it's not a happy one. I love this job.
You arrived here from North Dakota in 2004.
That's right.
What was it about Plattsburgh and this job at SUNY Plattsburgh that attracted you?
Well, there were several things, and one of them was I had been for 2 years in the late 80s, early 90s, living in Saratoga Springs and as a visiting professor at Union College. And this is the first time I'd spent any time in this part of New York, and I thought, wow, if anything comes along, I'd love to get back here. I loved it. I loved Saratoga Springs. And then I liked the idea of working in a small, comprehensive, residential liberal arts college, but in the public sector. All my career has been in public higher education, except for that 2-year stint at Union. And then this opportunity came along, and it's just what I wanted. It's in a small town in upstate New York. It's heavily residential, primarily undergraduate, liberal arts with professional schools grafted successfully onto them. I said, this is ideal. And so I went after it, and I got it. I was lucky.
So over your 15 years, what's been the most enjoyable part of your job?
The most enjoyable part, almost everything is enjoyable. If I had to pick one thing that sort of stands out, it's not a particular thing that happened, but it's something that happens regularly, and that would be the commencement ceremonies. I mean, because that's where it all comes together, and we realize it's ceremonial. It's the field house is packed. It's the culmination in the public representation of what we're here to do: help students to achieve their academic goals, help them, guide them towards success. And everybody's happy. Everybody's in a great mood. I love commencement ceremonies, shaking all those hands.
What would you say is your greatest accomplishment as president here? What would you like your legacy to be at SUNY Plattsburgh?
I don't know so much as a legacy or a significant accomplishment. When I arrived, the campus was recovering from some really painful last few years of my predecessor's tenure here, and they were, the faculty, some supported him, some wanted him gone, the paper wanted him gone, the students wanted him gone. It took a while, but they were just sort of demoralized. Enrollments were falling, and we were able to stabilize that campus, take the low morale and build it up, and also to start increasing enrollments again. So I guess I'm proud of that didn't happen by itself. There was strategy behind it, at least the enrollment. Although the last few years, enrollments have been falling again. So, and that's something that my successor is going to have to contend with.
As a lifelong educator, that must be disappointing to see the enrollment dropping off.
It's disappointing, but it's also hard on the bottom line because about 82% of our all funds annual budget comes from students. Taxpayers through the legislature support about 18% of what we do, and the rest is from students. So enrollments do mean budget, and departments know that. 80-something% of what we spend every year is in salaries. So if we take in less money because we have fewer students, that means we can employ fewer people, and that's basically the iron law of enrollment management. And everyone in most of the colleges and universities in SUNY are suffering from the same thing.
During your time here, though, there was a bit of a building boom. We saw the Hudson Hall Annex go up, the new Center for Earth and Environmental Studies, a beautiful building, the reconfiguration of Hawkins Pond, and of course the new Economics and Business building, Sable Hall, the new lecture hall going up. So those two new additions within the past few years, and those were some of the first buildings in decades on campus.
That's
major
right.
construction.
In fact, you're right, Tom. The Hudson Annex was the first new building since the library. You know, look in the cornerstone of the library, it says 1974.
How do you feel about the way you're leaving the campus?
I think it's in pretty good shape. There is some deferred maintenance, and there always will be, I'm afraid. But I hear from people, from alums who come back, and from people who are seeing the campus for the first time, perhaps bringing a student to take a look at us, that it's a pretty campus. There are things about it that I wish didn't exist, but there's nothing much I can do about it, or anybody can do about it at this point. For example, I wish that somehow, when it was being laid out, they wouldn't have put Broad and Ruger Street right through the heart of the campus. That there'd been some other way to get to the west side of town, but there wasn't a west side of town when they built that campus. The pond is lovely. I mean, that is, among other things, one of my proudest, in retrospect, achievements. I think it really is now the signature piece of the university, that and the outdoor sculpture.
As you leave, are there any regrets? Anything that you would have done differently?
Done differently, there were some hiring decisions, I suppose, that didn't work out, that in retrospect perhaps I could have done differently, but generally speaking, no. I mean, not things that I would have done differently, or there are more things that I wish hadn't happened, but I didn't precipitate, like the enrollment decline we were talking about a minute ago.
The past couple of years were difficult at times with some of the racial issues. There was some criticism. Could you have handled it better, or was there anything you would have done differently?
There are things that we could have done differently. There were two incidents, as you will probably recall, both having to do with media and student use of media. The first was a racist editorial cartoon in the student newspaper, Cardinal Points, that I was out of town. I was at a conference in Texas, and came back, but the damage was done. I mean, it was immediate and profound. The students who were outraged, and rightfully so, were asking that he be kicked out of school, and have to talk to them about protected speech and the First Amendment, but it didn't cut much ice with people who were incensed. So that, how we could have handled that differently, I don't have, and my successor will not have, editorial control over that paper.
Right. But did it raise questions about diversity? And has that, over the past couple of years, since that cartoon, and then the most recent, the Snapchat, that many consider to be highly offensive?
The community is fine. It's welcoming. It's open. But it doesn't take much. It takes one person driving down Ruger Street in a pickup truck with a Confederate flag. That's protected speech. Trying to get students of color to understand that is difficult. And that we couldn't expel immediately the young woman with the Snapchat, because again, it's hate speech, but it's protected. We have put in place things that will perhaps make it less likely for something like that will happen, but if you've got 5,000 students and they have access to social media, it is likely that something like that will happen again. Maybe we could have handled it differently.
You are leaving without a new president being named.
That's right.
There's been a search for the past several months, and there were finalists that went to the SUNY Board of Trustees, and they declined to pick any of the 3 finalists. Is that disappointing not to have someone here that you can hand the reins off to as you leave, or is that normal, that searches like this?
No, it's not normal. It's abnormal, and it's disappointing. It's not as if I announced my retirement 3 months ago. They had a year. And the campus did everything right. We put a committee together following the guidelines that SUNY established. We hired a consulting firm that did its job, generated an applicant pool of 120-something people. They did off-campus interviews. They distilled it down to 5 people we brought to campus, interviewed. I met them. They all were eminently well qualified, or at least, and they were different. They were all women. So I was saying blithely that my successor will be a woman, and it's high time. And something happened between when we sent the 3 names. I wasn't part of the search, by the way. Make sure everybody understands that I was hands off completely. But then something happened in Albany, and I don't know what. I hear third, fourth-hand stories, but I don't know what to believe. It is disappointing. It's profoundly disappointing, and it's disappointing to the campus as well. I would have been happy to see one of those women, but that wasn't to be.
What's next for you? What are you planning for retirement?
I don't know. I can't even tell you where. I hope it's around here someplace, or at least I hope to keep a pied-à-terre here, an apartment or something. I want, first of all, to just relax for a little while, see my grandchildren, and maybe teach a little bit, go back to writing, and read all those books that have been piling up that I haven't had time to get to yet. So that's a nebulous answer, but that's about as focused as I can give one right now.
Well, whatever you choose to do, we wish you the best.
Thank you,
Dr.
Tom.
Ettling, thank you very much for taking the time to come in and talk with us.
It was my pleasure. And I just to end this conversation to tell you, this has been the most supreme, best honor and privilege of my life to finish as the president of this SUNY Plattsburgh, this wonderful, wonderful school.